Thanks, Sam. I kind of want to lie down after listening. Thanks for having me. I think a lot of you were here a little bit earlier when I did the other talk, but I had said when I got the call to come here that you should just put me to work. Like I got a couple things I could do if I'm going to get on a plane. So thanks for coming back. Appreciate it. So networking is, first of all, I'm an introvert, and I think everybody needs kind of a playbook for networking, but my own experience is that introverts can be better at it than extroverts if you just kind of play your own game, and that's what I want to give you my own view on. And let's start with what is networking, because it sounds like a dirty word, and if it's done in a very sort of transactional way, it actually is. It's not something like I set out to do every day or ever. It's something that's kind of an outgrowth of things that I do. So let's start there in terms of my perspective. So it's not using people. And you've all either experienced or feared the person who like hits you up at an event, wants your card, then they're off like, kind of like scattershot, getting cards. They're not really there to build any kind of rapport or just get, really. That's not it. And that's not even going to succeed. It's just a waste of time. For me, it's just a series of kindnesses. It's giving kindnesses. Eventually, some of them come back. But the attitude for me is always just that, and without an expected return. But there's always a return. And the return is a great network, but relationships and other things I'll talk about. You already heard all this. You don't need my background. Sometimes I give this talk at universities, and I think that a lot of times the students believe that their career is going to be their resume. Like that's the goal. Because to get into college, it feels like a lot of resume building is really what happens. And but a career is really different. The resume, as you know, because you're professionals, the resume gets you in the door for an opportunity. But the things that land it are the other two R's, I call them, your relationships and your reputation. And that's where the network part comes in. So the hard skills, yes, if you want to, be a computer scientist, you probably need to know how to program. But it's those back channel phone calls to the people that you know and know you that will land you the job. And when I do, a lot of people don't realize, younger people don't realize when you do, you who've all hired know that you try to do the references that are given to you, but you probably try to find some back channel references too. And LinkedIn makes that pretty easy, where you call the person whose name wasn't given to you, so you can get another perspective. And I'm always really interested in those views as well, and the caliber of people that somebody is associated with. The ideal reference call, and this is back to the relationships idea, is somebody I'd also like to hire. Like, whoa, you just expanded my network because you applied for a job here, and I just met somebody else who's cool. I like this, and makes me think well of the candidate. So I'm going to talk about, when you think of networking, you think of things like this, an event, right? And I think that they are kind of one of the harder things to sort of get over, kind of feeling you master, if you will. So the first rule, I did put it up here. Be selective. Never, ever, ever go to a networking event. Like if the top thing in the title is networking, I did it once. You did it once? And it's never a place you want to be because nobody has any context for wanting to be there, right? You only go to things you genuinely care about or relate to your work or something you want to learn about. Like start there, you'll enjoy it a lot more, but then you walk in the room and have at least some context to share with the people in the room. So never go to a networking event. Before you go, this is something that's pretty cool you can do now that almost every event is administered digitally. Quite often you can get, for sure, the speakers ahead of time, who they are, but you often get the attendees. And I like to, before I go to an event, I never want to go to an event. I just don't. I like to go home at night, if it's a nighttime event. So I've got to make this work for me. How am I going to make this work for me? I'm going to feel a little bit shy and insecure, like most people in the room before they show up, even extroverts. I don't know who's going to be there. Is it going to be any good? So I reach out to a couple people. I study at least the speaker list, but often the whole guest list, if it's reasonable, and reach out to 2 or 3 people ahead of time to say, I'm going to be here. These are strangers. Sometimes people I know, but mostly I'm talking about strangers. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be wearing this, or I look like this. Here's my LinkedIn. And tell them I'd like to meet them, and one sentence, why. For me, I go into the room knowing that there's already something a little warm about it, and so does that other, people feel good when you reach out. And I generally do it on LinkedIn. If they're strangers, occasionally you have the contact information in an event registration. I do the same thing for speakers as well. That can be a little harder because it depends on their prominence. So sometimes for speakers, I learned early in my career, before I ever did any speaking, that quite often at an event, a speaker's milling around up front, and sometimes people don't know what they look like maybe the picture wasn't in the event announcement, and so they're just like some guy or gal up there doing nothing. They're bored, they're nervous themselves, whatever. So that's when I go to try to speak to speakers. Nothing wrong with going afterwards, but before, nobody ever does it. And so I've met some really prominent people, not because I wanted to collect them in my network, but I was just like being human. They looked bored, they looked whatever. So I just went up and said hi. And it's a really good way to meet people that are hard to meet normally. So find the folks that you reached out ahead of time, but then the rubber meets the road, and I'm going to talk a lot about follow-up. But if I meet somebody and I think we ought to stay in touch, I will immediately reach out on LinkedIn, or if I have a business card and I want to have more information about them, I still maintain a contacts database in my own resident on my own computer, just so that I can put in notes and give myself a little more context for a person, because I can't do that on LinkedIn. At least I've never cracked that, if you can. And I want to remember. I don't have a great memory, so I want to remember I met, Kathy at WMU, and it was this event on this date, and that's all I need, but I use it that way. So let's say you do have a project that requires networking. It's often a job search. Sometimes you're running a business or a part of a business and you need to meet, like do a sale, make a partnership. You might be just working on a project that you need subject matter expertise that you don't have. That's probably the most common way I use my network. I'm not looking for a job every 5 minutes or a partnership, but I'm always looking to learn things that I don't know. So if it's a project that I really need to attack and I need a network for it, the first place I would look for would be, especially again for folks that are early in their career, is people who are currently around them. So fellow students, parents of their friends, alums of the school, people who already have an affiliation with you, a shared context. Customers, service providers are often really great, because some of the best connectors are people who have to provide professional services. So lawyers, accountants, those kind of people, their profession depends on that. So they are wonderful for that. Another way to get started if you don't have a network at all is reaching back to your past. I went over to the new design studio at the university, met a couple students, and that's what I told them, because this was on my mind. See, the professor was introducing me. I said, stay in touch with her. It sounds easy because you see her every day right now. But when you leave, you're going to be very distinctive if you send an email once a year. Do it. Just pick 3 or 4 the people who most touched you. Do it. Former jobs, obviously. And if I'm in the active process of building a network, I'm going into a new area or I just don't have much of one, I set sort of reasonable goals of however many outreaches, meaningful contacts I can make in a week or a month. I just set a number so that I don't feel like I'm trying to boil the ocean every day. It's just overwhelming. But if, for instance, right now I'm trying to network to be on a corporate board, and I'm not in the flow of boardrooms, not so much. And even the people I know who are on boards don't know I want to do this. So my network is good for this, but I haven't tapped it. So I set a goal. I was a CEO until a year and a half ago. I set a goal of 1 contact a week. I started this project last year. And that's all I could do as a CEO, 1 contact a week. That meant a meaningful email exchange, meeting, or phone call. And that's it. Now I set a goal of 5 a day. Not meetings, but reaching out to people. Now, I'll be honest, I don't do it every day. But that's my goal. If I sit down, if I have the time on a given day, I do 5 outreaches for my project right now. Not so much building the network as just tapping my network. But you have to maintain a network, and that's part of it. It's really important to have a strong online presence. LinkedIn is, the best gift for that. It's really, if that's all you have, that's fine. So there are lots and lots of ways to figure out how to improve your LinkedIn presence. So I'd recommend looking for, they're free, these webinars, these online resources for it. But definitely do it. What I like about LinkedIn is it doesn't have rigid rules like resumes used to have. So there's a wide variety of what's good. Some people have really brief, like career histories with just the company, the title, the time that they worked there. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people put in more detail about what they accomplished. But there's some certain tools within LinkedIn that are useful. Let me give you a couple of examples. You might not realize if you didn't do an hour on a webinar. One would be, it's really important to go through the checklist of the skills you have. They offer this endless list of skills that you can say that you have, and you can pick up to 50. And this is how people search with those skills. So don't pick any you don't really have, but go through and make sure, 50 is not that many when you really look at it, because some are refinements of the same skill. And go through and pick, a good number, if not 50, to represent yourself. Another thing you can do on LinkedIn that I only did recently was there's a place where you can post media that you want to be associated with, an article that you liked or an article that you wrote. And in my case, there's a ton of video about me because my company produced a video every day. So that if I Googled myself, which I only just did recently, I realized there are endless videos that I'm in that are not interesting or important to me. They're a product launch that aren't central to my career. They're an individual video, So I went and put 3 things that I wrote or videos that I thought were decent in this little bar. You can see it. If you look at my profile, you'll see 3 pictures that are the media that I chose to represent myself. And recruiters at a more senior level are often looking for a representation of how you present yourself video-wise. And they'll go searching for whatever's out there, and that was why I did this. I'll save you the time. Look at this video. That one's not so good. So do that. Oh, one other thing is this pro tip here is if you want to get some search engine optimization. So when people search your name, something that you're happy with gets associated with your name. It's easier if you have an uncommon name. My name's really easy. Some names are super hard, but if you write Amazon reviews, I'm not an Amazon fan, but they're very powerful, use them, for a book that represents a professional interest of yours under your real name, you start to get SEO under your real name for something you're proud of, an affiliation, an expertise, something you want to be good at even. You could just show people you read these kind of books. So it's a nice behind the scenes way to get good SEO. I'm bullish on Instagram, blogging, Twitter, but only do take on a platform that you can maintain and enjoy, because you won't do it. If you love to write, it would probably be a Substack right now, not a blog, but Substack's great. If you're a news hound and you love sharing news, Twitter is great. It's easy. If you're more visual, Instagram. That's my jam is Instagram. I'm very visual, and I don't separate personal and professional on Instagram. I do in Facebook, I do on LinkedIn. Instagram is my, kind of, you can really get to know me place. And I don't mind that if I'm going to have a professional affiliation. Last night I was with my aunts in just outside Detroit, and they were yucking it up and cracking me up, and I invited them, put it up, because I'm proud of my crazy aunts, I don't mind my crazy aunts. So, I've already pretty much said this to you. One thing is, it's an amateur's mistake not to have a photo. If you let that like blue thing in the, whatever it is, the hero photo, be there, and the nothing burger in the photo, get a decent picture in there. And my son, I'll give you an example. My son is a supervisor in a big construction company. He has an incredibly stressful 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on-site job, keeping 14 trades in line and making sure he doesn't let anyone get hurt and they don't lose $100,000 because he screws up every hour. This is a hard job, but he's trying to transition to something that isn't going to kill him, right? Like the project management and the leadership that he's developed. This is not going to be an easy switch. And there's a lot of bias about construction that, he doesn't have the smarts or whatever to do an office job. And his LinkedIn picture it's a beautiful picture. I took it of him on a site looking so proud and handsome, but he's got a hard hat on, and like last time, like, I took other pictures of you. Use a different one. So just something that represents who you want to be, as opposed to him who he is now. He needs to like edge it a little bit. Look for errors. I know I don't need to tell adults this, but it always trips me up if I see an error on a LinkedIn. And if you see one on mine, tell me, please. So the best way to use it is searching for people. As I said, expertise is often what I'm searching for. And that usually means I'm trying to get somebody at a certain company, and one of my connections can get me there. So when I help my son, this is a project for me right now to help my son because he's not that plugged in. He's been working 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I'm looking at who do I know where are the hot companies. We're in Boston, of the hot companies. So this is going to be a heavy-duty LinkedIn project for me because I can't remember who I know practically. So I'm going to use it as like a stimulation for my own creativity and helping him. If you're really active on a search, or you just have a job that requires you to be networking out, upgrade to the premium. It's well worth it. You can send messages to people in a way that isn't as regulated or damped down by LinkedIn. You can also do things. I like to hide who I've searched. You can do that if you're premium. I don't want people knowing I'm looking at their profile. It's totally unfair and one-sided because I love seeing who's looking at mine. But I don't want people to know, like I might hit somebody up 3 times in a week and it looks like I'm stalking them. I don't want them to know that. So you can do that if you go to premium. Let me tell you how to connect to people. This event's a great place to follow up on LinkedIn. If you met somebody at this event and you think they'll remember your name, all you have to do is hit the connect button. They know why you're trying to connect. You don't need to write anything. But if it's something where they're not necessarily going to remember you, or you don't know the person, you really need to write something. And it needs to be directly, not generic. Like I get a lot of, we know a lot of the same people and I'd love to be connected. And I think that's a lie, first of all, or it's just like not very thoughtful. So write something that shows that this is a really actually individual outreach, not a generic outreach. That's when you do need to write something. And don't just like hit the connect button. Like you can do that on LinkedIn where they just serve up people you might like to be connected to. I never hit that button. And a lot of times I do know the people and it would be legit for me to hit that button, but I don't know. I do occasionally if they know me, but I mostly don't. I feel like I owe people an explanation, certainly if they don't know me. So let's say you're on this project and to get a job, to hire somebody, to build a partnership, to get on a board like me, to gain expertise. I have kind of a playbook for how I do this. I've been doing this for a really long time. I've changed countries, I've changed jobs, I've needed to be able to reach out to strangers. So the first thing I do is try to get an intro. That's like everything's easier if you can get an intro, and that's where the working behind the scenes in LinkedIn to find who you're connected to is extremely powerful. But sometimes you just don't have a connection, or it's a total stranger. So when I go in on those kind of things, it's kind of a formula. It looks like a very short email because it is. I don't want somebody to think I'm a time waster. Long emails look like time wasters. So I'm literally showing you how long it is. And it is email generally, but there's nothing wrong with trying Instagram, Twitter, other places. I've met great people that way too. And I start with something that's very, very direct to them. Like, I just read something they wrote. I'll give you an example. There was a young woman who was in her MBA program in Boston who wanted an internship at our company, the Grommet, and I was writing an active blog, and people who write blogs or write articles always love to hear like somebody read it. And she wrote a direct sentence about a post and then asked to meet, and gave me the perfect email. It was like, she hit me up with something personal. She told me who she was in a couple sentences, linked to her LinkedIn so that I don't have to go search for her. And then she said, I'd love to meet, a half hour would be terrific. She gave me some time frames, so I focused. So it's almost like when the realtor says, where are you going to put the Christmas tree? Like, she says, like, I have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and like, oh, I've got to think about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But mostly because she read my blog, I thought, okay, this person has it all going on. She ended up being a founding team member of Grommet. We were really, really early. She came in as an intern and a full-time, one of the most valuable employees of all time in this company because she wrote a good sentence. It's as simple as that. And she was really great. But let's see. So let's say, again, you're on a project, any of the types of things I said. The first thing you need to do is sort of get your story straight. When you first are trying to do something new, you're not very good at explaining it. Like a new job, a new whatever. So I always start with people who are going to be honest with me, but know me professionally or at school. And I can practice saying the thing I need to say. Like in the case of boards, I've let some, in this case it's been mostly women, sort of beat me up. Like, no, that took too long, I don't know what you mean, whatever. Let them give me a little bit of coaching on how I give the quick, you're mainly going for a quick elevator pitch when I say this, but just package yourself. You can waste these meetings because they're not going to think any differently of you if you do a bad job, and they aren't necessarily connected to the things you need anyway. The middle circle is where you start doing the actual, I'm going for this. I've got my LinkedIn ready. I've got my approach ready. And those people are people you may know, but they also may be the connector types I mentioned earlier, like the lawyers, the accountants. And then you only go to the bullseye, which is what you want, when ideally you've been introduced, or you're just so ready that you know that you're going to be able to perform well in that situation. So it's a real mistake to just start applying for jobs before if you're trying to do something difficult. If it's a job that you're highly qualified for and you know how to talk about it, fine. But if you're trying to do something a little trickier, spend the 2 to 10 meetings beforehand, just getting your story straight, or your resume reviewed, or your LinkedIn or cover letter reviewed. So let's say you do have that meeting, really key meeting. Pre-game's really important. So you're going to come in having studied the latest thing about that person. If there's anything you can find that they've, that's in the news about them, their company, their industry, be ready for that. And then come in. It's not an amateur thing to come in with written out questions or something on your phone, like coming in looking prepared. I think some people feel pressure to come in and be like this virtuoso, commanding the meeting by memory. But I know when I prep for a meeting, I can't remember everything that I tripped upon that I wished I would have asked about by memory. So I do come in to this day with, a list of whatever. I like paper, but I don't care how you do it. And then for me, like the board search, I come in, and this is good for a lot of things, I come in with a list of target companies. Because if you come in and ask someone to help you with a project and it's very wide, like boiling the ocean, they get kind of paralyzed. But if I show them a list of just 5 companies, their brain's moving. They get it. They're on it. 10 companies, even better. When you start out, you usually only have 2 or 3 because you haven't really discovered where you're trying to go yet, you know, but you always ask somebody, well, what's another company you think I should explore? And what's another one? And you come out of every meeting doubling your list, or, you know, adding 2 to your list. That's like a real pro tip. I rarely see it, but it helps people a lot. They love it. When you walk into the meeting, they're just human beings who may have had an argument with their child that morning, or, you know, had a bad meeting, or they're hungry. So I give them 5 minutes or so to get in my corner, because they're in their own corner legitimately, like I'm just whoever. And so I don't come in with like my best stuff, trying to start the meeting like right away, you know, impressing them or something. I'm not a super funny person, but if I can find a way to be funny, that's the best. If something happens that I can be, you know, human about, I love that. I love when people come in and do that. Just something I saw on the way or whatever to the meeting. And it could be a Zoom too. I'm not talking about always in-person meetings. And then I start with something softball for them, like that isn't going to be a hard question for them to answer, so they can just start warming up to me and starting to experience me as a person who is thoughtful. That's it. That's my brand. I'm a thoughtful person. Some people are funny, some people are witty, some people are razor sharp. I'm thoughtful. So I want them to start thinking that about me. And then the things I told you earlier to do, like coming in with questions or the companies or whatever it is you need help with, don't ask them to work super hard to solve your problem. Anything you can do to help them is going to get you what you need. But whatever you ask for, make sure it's appropriate to the relationship. And I'll give you an extreme example. I mentioned in the earlier session today that I worked for Meg Whitman. She ended up becoming CEO of eBay after I worked for Hewlett Packard, Quibi, ran for governor of California. She's a very prominent person now. She wasn't when I worked for her. And I do introduce people to her when I think it's beneficial to her, or that the person has a good, you know, reason. But occasionally a near stranger will ask me for an introduction. And my own relationships are my biggest asset in my career. And I don't have the right to use their time frivolously. And so that's the lens. Like, is this a vetted request? Well, if I don't know the person, it's not vetted. I don't know what they're going to be like with her, and I'm not going to, you know, I'll maybe take the time to get to know them, but I can't do it right off at the extreme with her. But I'll give you an example where I will make an introduction. Down at the session, somebody works in a business that has to go through dealers, and he's having a hard time getting the dealers to see the benefit of e-commerce and digitization of their business. And it's construction, and I don't have a great network in that area, but I did work with a contractor who is just amazing at social media. And he's like a spokesperson for the kind of products this man has. I said, I'll connect you to Nick, because I know Nick, and he trusts me, and we kind of owe each other all the time. We're always helping each other. You know, I think this kid I think he's a pretty young guy, you know, looks credible. I'll connect him to Nick. I'll do that. Like, Nick's not a big cheese, you know, but he's really good at what he does. After the meeting, connect on LinkedIn. That's table stakes. I usually do it before because I've already been on LinkedIn and they know I'm coming, but sometimes they don't, and I'll do it afterwards. And then usually in a meeting you're there because you need some information or introductions, and the person's offered something to you. And when you follow up after the meeting, don't just do a thank you, but send them a to-do list of what they offered. So at Harvard Business School, until recently, I used to go once a month, meet with 8 different student or faculty teams in a row to help them usually with a business or a career question. And sometimes the faculty was working on something. And the best thing I could do was introduce them to somebody. Like, it wasn't like I was going to start working in their business. It wasn't like I could get deep in a problem in a half an hour. But I often knew somebody who knew a lot more than I did. So I would give them the task of Okay, I'm giving you 2 names who I think would be useful to you. Your job now is to go research these people and make sure it's a good introduction. I might be misfiring, or it might be the wrong time. It's a good idea, it's the wrong time. And then come back to me telling me that they are, you want the introduction, or if you don't, even better, tell me you need it later. And give me something I can forward to those 2 people. A little bit like I mentioned earlier, like the 2-sentence ask. Like like Nick, I'm going to say, I met this man at a conference, and he seemed, actually no, what I'm going to do is say, I met this man at a conference and he has this request. And then I'm going to forward what his request is. I don't want to write his request. I'll get it wrong. It's a kindness to write the request. Like, make your asks the easiest check the to-do list thing of the day for the person. Include your LinkedIn so they don't have to remember everything about you, and introduce you more personally. It doesn't have to be a lot of work for the person. And then, everybody wants to check things off their list. Get that email out of my inbox. I'll introduce you to Nick today if you give me a good email. I can forward. Then what happens if they don't follow up? It happens all the time, right? You do the right thing and you hear, it's crickets. I think it's fine to ping twice. I wait about 10 days unless it's urgent, in between. And I just resurface the same email. No need to, do creative writing. Why make them think about it twice? They already maybe saw the first email and they got pushed down. And usually people are grateful when you remind them. And if they're not, they either aren't the kind of person who understands kindnesses, or they're too busy, or they really just aren't in a position to help you. And I move on. I don't, harangue them. But it's okay to ping. Don't be afraid to ping. What about long term? So this is how I sort of maintain this network that I do have, and it's not easy, but it's doable. First of all, I told you about immediate follow-up for any time you meet somebody or you run into somebody. It's great to do that. Even better is if the man I met downstairs meets Nick and he tells me he did it. Great. This is he's already above and beyond. Because I forget all the time to tell somebody that I did this. It's hard to remember, but try to do that. Then if somebody's really somebody you want to stay in touch with, a yearly update about you, something, anything, doesn't matter what it is. I mean, it's usually professional, but is a good thing to do because people sort of fade from memory, right? And it's a good thing to do that. And then the sort of good, better, best is if you can ping them with things about them. So I'll give an example. On the plane here, I mentioned it this morning about a new venture capital fund that is investing in sort of orphaned companies, good companies that just can't get the conventional investor. Well, I know a company like that. I'm going to ping the company that really is their current investor and say, this might be an opportunity. It's not about me, it has nothing to do with me. But if you get, you can't do that with people you just met, but people you know a little bit about. And I do read physical newspapers because I don't like algorithms telling me what to read, and I read more broadly in physical newspapers. I know it's kind of dinosaur, but I think it should come back. I don't like being told what to think and know. So I'm a big clipper. I send out a newspaper clip probably weekly to somebody. Often my kids. It's not like I'm spamming the world with clips, but I just think it's so distinctive to get a piece of mail that I've always loved it, and it's part of my playbook. Let's say you're on a project, it's really hard. Once it becomes successful and you've got a lot going on, it's hard to keep track of. Simple Excel spreadsheet is fine, but there are lots of tracking tools. HubSpot is one I'm using for my board search right now. There are lots of free tools. All you're trying to do, keep track of who you're trying to get to, what your last contact was, kind of what happened and what's next, so that you build a kind of tickler to-do list. Because you might say to somebody, I'll ping you in 3 months, but no human can remember all that, so some simple tool. Oh, I guess that's it. So this is my book. You already have it. Thank you. I hope it's useful to you. The 4th chapter is about networking. I think it's the best chapter. It's a lot of what he just said, but there's more. And it's because there are things in the book that are super specific to a current need in a company, but this is relevant to absolutely everybody. So I enjoyed writing that chapter the most. You can find me on LinkedIn. And my name being distinctive is super easy to find me. Like I said, Instagram. I use my real name everywhere, so you don't have to really work too hard. I'm happy to hear from you and help out where I can. So how are we doing for time, Sam?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Do you have time for questions?
We do.
Okay, great.
You have till 4, and it's currently 3:38.
Okay.
So you have about 10 minutes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? In the back there?
Thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation.
Thanks.
My physician partner and I are trying to expand our primary care practice and go into workplace wellness. And I was interested to hear some of your thoughts about your experience in the virtual, like Zoom setting, on how you connect with your audience.
Mm-hmm.
Because being, more of an empath kind of person, that's where my strengths shine.
Are you saying in a webinar situation where you're delivering content?
Yeah.
Well, I personally, it's kind of weird we're doing it right now. I enjoy the questions part of a talk more than the talk on my side. So I always try to protect that time. I find, this is so weird. It's like looking in a mirror or something right now. But generally, people get me to think of something that's better than the thing I even just said. Like it's a better example or it's real time.
You tap into your audience then.
Yeah, because I know what they want, and I don't know when I'm standing up here all alone. So I would protect that Q&A. It's a little hard digitally because people are afraid to ask out loud. So if there's somebody's monitoring and they can put it into the chat, I find that's way better. They're always there's always a few people asking a lot of questions, but when it's got to be out loud, I find it kind of goes quiet quite often. So I would use all the tools. That's what's good about digital, better than in person, that people who don't want to, speak publicly, like no one hardly ever does, they don't have to. No, we were talking with my aunts last night, we were talking about that, like they were saying, oh, I could never speak publicly. And they think that like people want to. Like, no, I don't want to do this. It's scary, but yes.
Well, I just want to say thank you for saying don't go to networking events, because as an introvert, I've always used the approach of, the emails, sort of the way you talked about structuring them and reaching out in that way and connecting with people on a personal and professional level, one-on-one. And I always think, oh, God, I should be out there doing networking.
Yeah.
Like that, and so I'm so thankful that that's not what you're saying we should do as
Yeah.
introverts. Just get past it and go out there and meet the world.
Yeah, the stuff you want to learn about anyway, right?
And it's so you don't bring anything away from it. I
Yeah.
never do anyway.
Yeah. And even when I do go to an event and I've planned to meet a couple of people, I meet them, say, in the first half hour, usually. And then I just totally relax. Like it might have been great, I might have been wrong. The person wasn't really what I thought or whatever. And then I might meet the person I really needed to meet, but I'm so relaxed. I don't really care whether I meet anybody. It's weird. I just need that, like, that's the goal, and then I feel good.
That's my standard thing when I go to a networking event. I make the goal before I go in the door. If I'm driving in the car, you only have to meet 3 people. You only have to talk to 3 people. You only talk to 3 people. But once I talk to 3 people, then all the pressure is off.
Exactly.
And it may be the third person, like you're saying, you spend all the time with, and maybe it's the 4th or 5th or 6th, and you just feel that much more comfortable.
Yeah.
As an introvert, that works so well for me.
Yeah. And then you don't mind also if you decide to have that deep dive with another introvert, right? Like,
Right.
Who cares?
Or if you don't meet anybody else, I was successful. I met the goal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing where I think you highlighted this a little bit, again, you're not necessarily all introverts. I think this stuff works well for extroverts too. But the introvert sort of, at least our reputation is like think before we talk and a little bit more thoughtful, works really well to network because people love, to know that you are really thinking about them. It's not generic, you're special. Because it is with an introvert in the approach I mentioned. It's not generic, never. Somebody, I don't know if this is in my book, but my friend Mike Troiano gives the example. I have not seen The Godfather, but apparently in the beginning of the movie, there's a scene where the Godfather is asked by some lower level guy to do something for him. And he basically explained networking to him, like, this favor's out of line, and if I give it to you, I'm going to owe you. It's the negative side, but it's kind of Mike's take on networking. Do you know the scene in the beginning? You can imagine.
I'm shocked that you have never seen the movie.
I know.
That's okay. I'm going to write you a note about that.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah, I do. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's hot in here. You guys ready to go get some fresh air? Yeah. All right. I guess Sam, are we good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fabulous.
Thank you.